So briefly, I'm going to talk to you today about the UTK Leadership Certificate. So it is it's actually offered through a partnership from the state. So 21 CSLA State Center. And you'll see in those links that I provided you, there's also regional as well. So you have, it's a free resource to leaders across the state. So for coaching, professional learning, other aspects. But today specifically, I'm going to talk to you about the UTK Leadership Certificate. And this is actually, you will get 4 units of credit from UC Berkeley Extensions and also receive a Universal Transitional Kindergarten Leadership Certificate. So I'm going to talk to you a little bit about that. But just so, who's this random guy talking to me after I'm so tired from being in a long learning session this morning? So just briefly, I'm Chris Thomas. So I actually started my career in San Bernardino. My first teaching position, I was started in San Bernardino at Burbank Elementary School. So if anyone knows, they're right there by Orange Show. So, and then I was a principal. I was a professor. I used to work at the University of San Francisco, and then I left there, went back to being a principal in Seattle. I was a principal in the Seattle Public Schools. And now I work for UC Berkeley, so I'm a recovering principal. So trying to still figure out life after that. And this is a really important aspect to me is I have a 3-year-old and a 6-year-old right now. So it's also really close to me just in terms of my own personal life as well. So just for all of you, some of us still I think this is still learning for some of us across the state is that by 25, 26, all our buildings are going to be providing TK to 4-year-olds. And I think what we need to remember in that is that for many of us in the state, and this is for new leaders, but also for current leaders in the state, we really haven't had this background. You know, we've had a K-12 background, but having 3- and 4-year-olds starting to enter into our spaces, we may have had a preschool classroom, a head start in our buildings, but some of us haven't interacted in that way. And even the leadership role around that's changed dramatically because it used to be that like an early learning coordinator held a lot of that responsibility and worked directly with the teachers. But now that is shifting where principals are going to be holding a lot more responsibility in this. And so I said a little bit briefly about 21 CSLA already. So I just cognizant of everyone's time today. So just we received $2 million to offer free coursework to those who are currently in a PASS program. So those in a CAS program, so those who are clearing their program or those who have a certificate of eligibility. So until the end of the 25-26 school year, it's basically free coursework that's offered up to people entering the field. I think the state realized that, hey, this is happening. We have this new PK3 teacher credential that is just now coming up, but we really don't have anything for administrators. So county offices, districts are doing a lot of wonderful work across the state, but everybody is just working to create this. And this is just an opportunity as we kind of work to kind of fill that space as we're moving forward. So just briefly, part of our work that's really important to me and to our team is we developed a purpose and equity statement. So one of the things we really had to shift in our work was, and I think both, is it Ronnie and Ellen had both highlighted a little bit, is that, you know, from a K-12 perspective, we have an understanding of early learning, but we really also met with all of the Head Start, preschools, because in our new system, it's a mixed delivery system. So not everyone even has to choose to go to the public school. So there's a lot of shifts and changes in how we even do this work together. And so this is just to give you some more background, but we developed a purpose and equity statement to kind of keep us focused in how we thought about our work together. So what this is it's 100% free to you. And there are 2 courses. They are synchronous. So just kind of thinking about life and all those pieces. There are 2 synchronous courses. They're each 30 hours in length. And for each of those, you receive 2 units of credit from UC Berkeley Extension, so graduate credits. By the time you're finished, you'd have a total of 4 units. And you would also then, when you're completed with the 2 courses, receive the UTK Leadership Certificate. So just to give you kind of a sense of what's in those courses is really helping you understand the policy. So in the first course is really helping you understand the policy and the social emotional aspect of that, because of all of the early learning is really around SEL and a lot of play-based learning. And I think one of the biggest equity issues that's coming up across the state is like how we're thinking and talking about play. Because it's really, we have really different views and how to think about that. And so if we're really doing developmentally appropriate instruction in our TK spaces, that means that there's going to be play-based learning happening. And that's a big shift for a lot of us. And so how are we going to have those conversations? How are we thinking about that work and doing it? And then, the lastly is the family and community engagement. And that's both in terms of how are the transitions looking like in our schools, but also as I mentioned, is that we're having mixed delivery systems. So 4-year-olds are still coming in through other avenues into our schools. So we need to be clear about what those relationships look like for us. And then the second course is really getting to the kind of the instructional leadership aspect of those pieces. So what are the look fors in a TK classroom? How do we think about alignment across? Because it's really about alignment P3, right? Not just that, okay, we need to know what TK is. It's about what does that alignment look across the system? And how are we doing in that? And then what's our improvement practices for that? And then kind of the courses are very flexible. All of you are like already holding a lot, right? So we're very flexible in terms of you need to be there for the courses. Obviously, you need to show up for that, but like you can take one course at a time. You can take both courses. Like we're flexible. They're on different evenings during the school year. And then we also have a summer program, and you don't have to, you can take like one in the fall and you could take one in the summer, depending on how kind of work and life is balancing out for you. And there are assignments because it is credit bearing. So there are 3 assignments in each course. And let me stop there and pause for questions in just a second. And I think the other thing I just want to say is that what's come from this class is more than people saying, thank you for this content, because nobody's giving us this, is I think the more is that people are developing just like I think with the cohort you have here, is you develop a network of folks who are doing the work, right? Like, so part of the work in leadership is like being able to network and know where to look for support and help. And so being a part of a program like you are already a part of, this is just another space where you can look to other people who are doing TK work across the state. So, because we're hearing lots of different stories, like where we're starting with inclusion in the state. This is how we're thinking about like assessment pieces. So a lot of those conversations come up and then we talk about them collectively. This is just some samples of student responses, kind of like what they're getting from the classes.
One thing I want to add, Chris, if I can, is we have a lot of secondary people, and I just want to I want you to expand your thinking, because you may say, I am a high school person, but your professional career will take you different places. I was a secondary person, and I ended up being a regional director at one point in my career and supervising 14 elementary schools. And not having this background was hard. I just didn't have that early. So I just don't want you to think you're always going to be, opportunities are going to take you different places. So just think beyond what is now to your future. And the fact that this is a state, this isn't, an initiative, this is a state requirement that we do these things. And so it's important that we learn to do them well.
Yeah, and thanks for saying. I mean, one of the things that's come up in class, right? For example, like so we have had middle school and high school folks in the space, and so one of the things again is around this idea of like things with play, so big body play, right? Like, so how do we think about how kids play? Like when we see them out at recess, even, and like what is the way in which we're handling and thinking about like discipline and those pieces with that? So there's some real connections, and a lot of the things go back to like really the foundational SEL and things we need to think about, because a lot of what we're doing in middle school and high school, unfortunately, right now is trying to put everything back in, right? Like, how do we add joy back in? And we think about Goldie Mahan, we think about all these people, they're telling us all these things we need to put back into schools. And so some of the early learning stuff is about like, this is how we should just be, right? And it's how we should be always. I mean, you're going to hear this from your professors too, I'm sure. But it's like, this is how we should always be and just how we interact with folks. But like, it really kind of helps us ground and think about where it starts at. And then in the links I gave you, you can go and you'll see all these pieces, but here's the fall courses. And again, if it's like, hey, I'm starting a preliminary program, I'm not ready to do that yet. So there will also be spring courses coming up. I'll probably have the spring courses on the website in the next week as well. So always feel free to reach out with any questions or anything you have about those pieces.